Oh, screw my internet recently. God damn it. I think my chat's confused now, too. I won't carry on just yet. I'll give some people a chance. We barely even started. I got like 10 minutes in. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know why. My internet's been so reliable for the last few weeks. It's just been like, nope. But looks like everyone's back. Scuff is life. I can get back on pretty fast and hopefully it lasts a bit more than 10 minutes. Yeah, let's not be too mad. We are calm. We are okay. And we are reading my book. Where were we? Let's go back a page, and I'll go from there, because obviously I don't know exactly when it cut out for you guys, so... There were epic battles between good and evil. Heroes and villains fought every day. But sadly, that meant for anyone who didn't have a trick, the world had become a dangerous place. Law enforcement was all over the place due to vigilante justice messing up the system. And the villains' plans normally led to hostages, bombs, and quite a lot of collateral damage. All it took was to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Dreda Toth was 20 with no trick to speak of, and so sick of the world's shit, she turned the TV off and went to make some tea. You know, because that's just how you deal with anything. Someone would deal with Apex as they always did with every villain. She gave a glance to a figure of a hero in grey robe she had on her bookshelf, hoping her favourite, Mr. Paragon, would deal with him, so she could see her on TV. But turning away, she knew Apex Illusionist was the archenemy of Frigid Hack, so it wasn't likely. Even if it was Hack or her favourite, the people would die as a result of the conflict, and the world would continue spiralling down into the strange, dark place where anything could happen. Except for her one hero, Dreda did her best to turn a blind eye to the world of tricksters and live her own life. She'd worked hard the past few months to try and pin down a job. She had no qualifications to her name, so she'd been finding it near impossible to even pin down an interview. But she had a stroke of luck. A large office firm had agreed to meet with her for an interview. They said her lack of qualifications wouldn't be a problem as they were willing to train her up. But, nope, no buts there. Don't know where that came from. She was meeting them tomorrow. She was nervous as hell though, so it was going to be her first job interview. She clamped her hand around the hot cup of tea and blew out her breath, trying to picture blowing out her anxiety instead of air. In her head, she went through all the advice the job centre had given her 1,000 times before going to bed that night. Although, all it took to get mixed up in the mess of heroes and villains was to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or at least in Dreda's case, hand her CV to the wrong person. The next day, Dreda found herself sighing again, wondering if she hadn't turned off her TV last night. Would she have been able to figure out that her job interview was a trap to lure hostages for Apex's plan? She'd arrived, a red-haired bundle of nerves buttoned up into smart trousers and a shirt, only to find the familiar face of Apex sitting on the other side of the desk. He flashed her his infamous, insane grin and gleefully told her, "You're hired," just as the room started to fill with gas. Dreda darted to the door to get out, but it was locked, and before she could knock it down, her world had turned black. When she next woke up, she was seemingly on the moon? Her body stiffened, frozen as her mind tried to process the utterly bizarre situation. There was white rock beneath her, and it made her hands dusty with a chalky substance from touching it. There was a black abyss above her head with only small pinpricks of light scattered throughout. When she looked to her right, she saw, well, the earth. A ball of misty white with bits of blue peeking through the smokescreen. What else could it be, she thought, Tilting her head, she took a few deep breaths to calm herself. Illusionist, she reminded herself. At least she couldn't complain about his idea of keeping hostages. Out of curiosity, she tried jumping, but it seemed Apex's illusions couldn't affect gravity or temperature. She didn't go flying and landed back on the ground like she normally would. That would be a little bit overpowered, she mused, looking around, wondering if she was alone in her moon adventure. She wasn't. The other hostages were here too, but some were sitting on seats that weren't there in her vision. Others were leaning on invisible walls. It was like watching a mime convention. So where do you think you are? She asked the person closest, just assuming everyone had a different illusion. The geeky guy jumped out of his skin, whizzing round to face her. He fumbled with his glasses that nearly fell off and pushed a few dark long bangs out of his face. I think I'm in a database? He eventually responded after looking around a bit. You seem really... What does a database look like? Drada tried to picture being in a 2D screen. Zeros and ones. Right, so it's the Matrix for you. He laughed. I suppose. Oh, I don't like this bit. This bit embarrasses me. Another hostage screamed. What are you doing? Don't touch me there. Matrix and Drada watched the man fall back, his face completely red, panicky but not afraid of the touches from thin air. Is he? Drada found herself blushing a bit as she thought of what his little illusionary prison was. I hope not. Matrix turned away and Drada followed suit. They tried to ignore the loud man stuck in a hentai game. So... Matrix tried to start a conversation. Where are you? The moon, apparently. It's quiet. The view's pretty nice, so I can't complain. That says a lot about you. The voice came out of nowhere, and all the hostages fell silent. Apex gradually came into view, like he had used a video transition to bring himself into existence. Drada wondered how long he'd been there. Stuck in a watch. Shush, don't even think about it, don't think about it. Looks like my chat is kind of... I'm gonna see if I can refresh my chat a minute, because I think it's a little bit broken. Which one is it? This one. Refresh. There we go. You're back. Don't think about it. I'll tell you where those ideas specifically came from once I finish the chapter. Drada wondered how long he'd been there without her being able to see him, or whether he just walked through a door she couldn't see. Are you all having fun? He looked around. Observing his hostages gave him a few different answers. Hentai's bonus said yes. One woman's teary face said no. Drada's plain expression said bored. And Matrix's now icy expression said okay. But now you're here. Why show us such horrible things? Said the crying woman. The crying woman barked between sobs as she clutched herself. Horrible things? Drada tilted her head. Oh, I'm not making you see anything. You yourselves are shaping the illusions. I'm just giving them power. If you're seeing horrible things, that means you're a horrible person. Apex gave a smug grin as those words sank in. One hostage, a well-built man, was red with rage. His fists were shaking, clenched so tight Drada thought that he might end up breaking the skin on his palm with his nails. What do you want with us? The man gave a shout that made many in the room flinch. As I said to the world last night, I have a show to put on. A show to dazzle and probably make a few people puke. And you, my friends, are the stars of that show. Apex told them in a proud and animated fashion. The show will be called Apex Job Hunt. in which I will pick out 2 of you each week to battle it out for a chance at the apex prize, freedom and life. Only one of you will have the privilege of coming out of this alive. The atmosphere in the room turned cold. Hostages flinched at the emotions changing their illusions. The teary woman screamed and clasped her hand to her head as she fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. But Dreda? Dreda's outward appearance seemed calm, if only a little tense. Her world did change, though. The earth and the sky moved on a path to block out the light. The sun was consumed by the misty planet until it was completely taken over by the black abyss. The bright white rocks were left in shadow, but it was nothing compared to the darkness that lay behind Dreda's eyes. Why? She asked, her voice flat. Why? Apex turned to her, his insane grin, thinking nothing of the look of death he was receiving, and honestly that pissed her off more. Must I answer that? Why do I do anything? To show the world, to make everyone see the way you do. Matrix hissed, his almost too bright blue eyes surprisingly sharp compared to the jumpy geek that was there before. Exactly, Apex said, pointing to him. You see to see the monsters that lie in everyone, even the most normal and nicest of people. You're the monster! The teary woman screamed as she burst into a fit of sobs again. You can't keep us here! You can't make us fight each other! You're a psycho! The hostages burst out into a chorus of abuse and protests, and Apex did nothing but smile at them. His smile grew and grew until it split his face in two, as he threw his jaws open and all sound was consumed by laughing madness. Anger gave way to fear as the laugh chilled the hostages to the bone. The small group looked between each other, Hentai backing away from the laughing man, the teary woman getting up and scrambling as far away as she thought she could get. Apex's laughter died down, and the man wiped his eyes of tears. With a smug look of victory, he turned to leave through whatever door he had entered, but he hadn't noticed the person who had moved in front of him. He stumbled a bit to avoid bumping straight into her, and quickly pushed away, his expression of momentary surprise to plaster his face with a smile again. Are you angry? Well, he couldn't finish his sentence. It took the entire room a few moments to take in the series of fast practice movements that led to the scene before them. Apex a few seconds more than everyone else to process his view of the floor that he had from his knees. His smile was gone, and as he blinked at the ground, until he registered there was a hard boot on his back, pushing him forward, and a searing pain from his muscles as his arms were held back in positions they were not supposed to go. You can't see a monster when it's standing right in front of you. Dreda calmly put more weight on his back. I won't let you do this to these people. Apex gritted his teeth in pain, trying to hold back a cry. The cold blue of his eyes turned icy as he hissed. What are you? Some kind of hero? Would a hero really be doing this? She put on more pressure and Apex screamed out as one of his arms gave a sickening click. Pathetic. There are better ways to handle this, Moon Girl! Matrix yelled, slowly approaching the scene like Dreda was some kind of animal that would react to a sudden movement. You want me to let him carry on with this? She turned her head to him, everything about her calm. A A sickening crack echoed through the room again, and the woman crying on the floor yelped. The rest of the hostages stood stunned. Even the man whose skin had been red with anger was now pale as a ghost. Yeah, I mean, Matrix struggled to think of what to say. What if I said I can get us all out of here unharmed, and all you have to do is knock him out? Apex will be taken to prison, and no one will get hurt. Trader took a few moments to consider it. The sea blue of her eyes meeting the icy blue of Matrix's. She didn't see why he would lie at a time like this, but at the same time, she struggled to think how he could get them out if she just got Apex out of the way. Surely he had henchmen. And how could Matrix contact anyone when their phones had been taken away? Not to mention Drada had her own trust issues, and was reluctant to put her faith in his word. She looked back to Apex, unable to find a reason not to break his spine right now. For the sake of one less death, Matrix prayed that his words got through to her, and they did. The words resounded with Drada, and she stopped pushing her captives back. But he wanted to kill all of us, came the whimpering words of the teary woman through the stunned silence. Why shouldn't he die? The posed questions seemed to snap the other hostages out of their shock. The well-built man who had been angry up until a few moments ago chimed in. She's got a point. That monster doesn't deserve to live. And now you're proving his point. Matrix turned to them in fury. You're all just as much of a monster as him if you decide to kill so quickly. We're not the ones who wanted everyone to kill each other, one hostage told him. And he certainly killed loads of people. We've all seen the news, said another. Matrix seethed, fists clenched, teeth grinding. He barked his arguments back at the other hostages, but seemed unable to make them take the high road. Although they seemed to forget it was Drada in the end that held Apex's life in her hands. Quite literally. You've been quiet, she spoke to Apex, wondering why he had nothing to say to defend himself. I know when I'm beaten. He strained to look around. So you're giving up when there's an argument on whether you live or die going on? She tilted to see if she could get a look at his expression. In the end, this is what I wanted. For people to become the monsters they are. He chuckled at his victory. Anyway, their opinion doesn't matter. You're the one who would do the deed if asked, am I correct? So, really, it's your choice what to do with me. I did have all intentions of killing you. I'm already a monster. It would make no difference to me. Those people aren't yet, though. And well, for the sake of one less death, you're actually going to survive this. She sighed, not sure if she made the right decision. I'm gonna break your arms, though. I fucking loved me. She added. Well, thanks for the warning, at least. He braced himself. With that, the argument was stopped, as a second sickening crack echoed through the room, followed by a scream. Drada let go of Apex and kicked him in the head as he fell, successfully knocking him out. Like when she first grabbed Apex, there was a frozen silence. None of them really saw what happened, so for all they knew, that crack could have been his neck. He's alive. Just both his arms are broken. She finally filled them in. I said just knock him out. Matrix glared. You never said just. That is one of my favourite lines. You never said just knock him out. Drada shrugged. At least you didn't kill him, he sighed, hands landing on his hips as he shook his head. The rest of the hostages seemed to abandon the argument to kill him now he was taken care of, a sense of relief washing away that that darkness. Yes, it's very important to specify that he just wanted him knocked out, but breaking arms, though. So, can we leave? One of the hostages asked Matrix. Yeah, I just need to make a call, he answered, pulling a device from under his collar and using it like a phone. While this happened, Trader walked away from Apex before getting tempted to hurt him more, and was stopped by a "Thank you." She paused and looked around to where it came from, her eyes eventually resting on the teary woman who had gotten up from the floor. What you did was scary, but you saved us. The woman smiled at her. Don't thank me, Trader said simply. Why? The angry man, who was no longer angry, came in. It's like she said, you saved us, thank you. Trader's eyes just went dull as she looked away, not really sure how to react to their gratitude. Alright, we'll be picked up soon, Matrix after finishing the call. And that's the end of chapter 1. So I'm going to go through a little bit of that. I'll tell you where some of it came from and where some of the ideas came from and why there's a strange hentai man in there. And you can blame Nelly Furtado for that. Okay, so this from... Let's go back. Drader's whole situation with finding a job is mainly because at the time when I was writing this, I too was finding a job. I did have qualifications to my name, but I was in that stage of my life and I was writing about it. So that's kind of where that much came from. Easy peasy, write what you know. Apex job hunt, blah 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 blah. Where's the moon? We gotta go from the moon onwards when she thinks she's on the moon. Haha, yes. So from this point, this was the first section I wrote of Moon Girl ever. And it came from a sort of writing exercise you can do called playlist writing. A friend from college introduced me to it. Where basically you get a playlist, you stick it on random, and write something on the theme of whatever song comes on. And every time a new song comes on, you need to introduce something or change something based on the song that comes on. So the first song that came on while I was writing this was Moon Pride. Which I don't know what the lyrics mean because it's the opening for the Sailor Moon Crystal anime. So I was just like, fuck it, it's based on the moon. And that's how we ended up with Moon Girl. It's Sailor Moon's fault for her having a cool opening in her remake anime. Then the song changed by the time we got to... So it's edited a little bit, obviously, so from the first playlist, right? So when we got to Matrix in the Database, the next song that came on was Database, the Log Horizon opening. Database, just living in a database, whoa, that one. And that's what that part came from. And then the next song came on when Hentai came in. And the song that came on was Promiscuous by Nelly Furtado. So that's where the dodgy bit came in. Promiscuous girl. And that's where that came in. Yeah, it was a promiscuous song, so a promiscuous thing happened. That's just the way. That is the way. Then I those are the only ones I really remember specifically. I didn't write it down. The only other one I remember specifically was when Drader turns and she does like a whole I'm a monster thing. I can't remember the band that does this. There's a lot of bands that have songs called Monster. I'm pretty sure it's 3 Days Grace. I feel it deep in, it's just beneath the skin. Da 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 da. I feel like a monster. I hate what I've become. The damage just begun. Na 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 na. I feel like a monster. That one. If you remember who that actually did that one, Good for you, because I don't remember. And that's a lot of where chapter 1 came from. And a lot of Moon Girl originally came from, because that was like the first thing I wrote, and then I edited around and started making the plot and putting it together. And I started getting really into superheroes and stuff at the time, so that's kind of why it all happened. 'Cause 2015, you had like the Marvel movies were starting to really get upcoming. I just started dating my boyfriend not too long before writing this. Skillet, yes, that's the one. Thank you, Rippy Dippy. And he introduced me to Young Justice and a lot of other sort of superhero-y things. We started watching Arrow together and things like that. So I had superheroes on the brain, and that ended up spawning this whole ass book. So let's get on to chapter 2. They didn't have to wait too long. 50 minutes of paranoia that some henchmen were going to turn up wasn't exactly fun, but the time eventually passed. The steel door was kicked open, the loud bang exploding away the silence and scaring the hostages half to death. Drader was ready for a fight, but the person who stepped in was not an enemy. Dun 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 dun! A girl sang as she raised her hands above her head and struck an heroic pose. She was clearly not one of Apex's, and Drader relaxed. Adorned in colours of red and green, her long coat held her symbol of a red circle in a green circle, a bullseye. Her ankle boots left bare leg up to her small red hot pants. Well, except for the parts where she had darts strapped around her thighs. The mask on the dark-haired girl's face was reminiscent of a masquerade ball, and it didn't hide her onyx eyes and proud grin. Dart Tornado to the rescue! Now, if you would come right this way, I will get you to safety! Watching Dart dance out her announcement, Drader frowned, deeply confused. She stood still, letting the other hostages go first. She'd expected frigid hack. But then, she glanced to Matrix. Maybe he was busy. Hey, Moon! He met her eyes and walked to her. My name's not Moon, it's Stop. He wagged a pale finger and Drader glared, insulted. Don't tell me your name yet, okay? It's important. He is a girl called Dart Tornado. Alright. Drader gave a confused frown. And I need you to stick with me for a bit, okay? The others will be dropped off at the police station to make statements and stuff. Don't get off with them. Okay. Drader agreed, still very confused. She was very uncomfortable with the idea of being kept separate. She couldn't help but question if she was in trouble, but then she reasoned if she was in trouble, they'd leave her with the police. She gritted her teeth in annoyed confusion as she left with Matrix, and they were separated out into two vans. Her, Dart, and Matrix in one, and the rest in the other. Anxiety and anger bubbled up inside of her. So this is them? Dart looked at Drader over when the doors of their van closed. I thought it was going to be the scary guy, she added with a disappointed pout. What are you talking about? Why do you have me separate? Drader snapped. Do you really need to ask after what you pulled in there? Matrix raised an eyebrow. Drader tensed. Yeah, okay. She broke Apex's arms, but he was a bad guy, right? Did it really matter? She didn't kill him. She tried not to show how worried she was. She couldn't figure out what they were thinking. Was she in trouble or not? Were they going to take her straight to prison instead of taking her to the police or something? Well, Geek Boy here told us about your stunt, So we need to ask you a question, Dart explained, leaning forward as the van started to move. Drida glared, anger covering confusion. What? Why did you hurt Apex? Matrix asked the question. Drida just stared back at Matrix for a moment. Why? She wondered what they wanted to hear. Why did it even matter? She looked to her lap and resigned herself. She'd never know unless she gave an answer, so she gave them the truth. Because I had to stop him. Because I could stop him from putting those people through something horrible. Why else? Dart and Matrix exchanged a small smile that made Drida angry again. Seeing them understand everything and leaving her bumbling in the dark. It was like parents laughing at a sex joke their child had no idea they just made. So, to put it simply, you did it to save the others, Matrix confirmed. Yeah! Drida glared, literally not able to think of any other reason you would do what she did. You pass! Dart clapped. Pass what? Drida barked at the girl, but Dart didn't seem fazed by the deadly glare she was receiving. One more odd question, and Drida was about ready to rip Dart's head off. Luckily for Dart, the smoke was cleared with the hero's next question. Do you want to be a hero? A moment of silence took over the van. Drida looked at Dart, dumbfounded. She even leaned away from her and straightened her back, looking like a scared meerkat. All that anger faded, the words leaving her with only one word in her mind. What? Do you want to be a hero? Matrix repeated slowly and clearly, like he was talking to a child. Drida was far too confused to be insulted. What? Why? What? What the hell? What about what I did said hero to you? I got pissed off and broke a man's arms, she exclaimed, wondering what planet these two were from. High combat skill, reckless action to protect others, ability to stay calm and think clearly in bad situations, and a lack of fear, Matrix listed. And that's what makes a hero? Drida asked, still not able to believe what she had just been asked. For the insane situations we end up in, yeah, Dart chirped. You realize I had all intentions of killing him, she pointed out. Then why didn't you? Then why didn't you? Dart tilted her head, the single side ponytail flopping in her vision, so she was forced to untilt her head and chase away the offending hair. One less death, she answered, looking away from Matrix, who she expected was going to sit there smug about it. You weren't going to kill him for revenge or for fun, you said it yourself. You were going to do it for others. So, at least you were going to kill him for a good reason. And it didn't take much to change your mind. Matrix explained it logically. Drida took a deep breath and started to consider it all. Apparently, insane was hero material. Which, when you thought about it a little bit, made sense. The things the heroes did for the sake of others. When she thought about the news and articles, there was no way you could do what they did and still call yourself sane. But Drida had done all she could until now to stay away from the trickster game. All she had wanted to do was live her life. But it was so easy to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was so easy to hand her CV to the wrong person. Maybe turning a blind eye wasn't going to be good enough. If she could help against that. There'll be some tests before we can give you the okay on it, but you're looking for a job, right? Matrix cut into her thoughtful silence. Hero wasn't exactly what I had in mind, she admitted. She had just wanted a nice little office job. Heck, she would have been happy to be T-Girl for the rest of her life, but it seemed the world had other plans. Plans that she was starting to think weren't a bad idea. Drada wasn't too good at English or maths, nor did she have a single qualification to her name. Maybe this was the best way for her because she knew if she was good at anything, she knew. Maybe this was the best way for her because if there was anything she could do, it was beat people up. If she could do that to help people, who was she to argue? I'll do your tests and give it a try. Welcome aboard, Moon Girl! Dart clapped. Drada gave a nod, honestly not sure how to deal with someone as hyper as Dart, and looked to Matrix, deciding to test something. Nothing to add, frigid hack? Drada had to admit she was slightly disappointed when she didn't get the same jumpy reaction she had when she first spoke with him, though she didn't mind the slightly impressed look he gave. When did you figure that out? He asked curiously. When Dart showed up instead of you. But the fact you were in an illusionary database helped. Where else would you be if you were gathering information? She explained. Huh. Not bad detective skills then. Hack added to the mental lists of things that could make Drada a hero. It was a quiet journey to wherever they were going. Drada had plenty of time to go over it all in her head. She would need a costume, stage name, she'd actually have to talk to people. Her stomach started to turn again as nervousness set in, but then left again in an instant as she remembered something that might be a problem. I don't know. Does my anxiety show through in my writing? Have you noticed? I don't have a trick, you know. All heroes have that, she declared. I think you have one. Hack looked over. It's just not as obvious as throwing fire. You mean like strength, speed, or reflex boosts? Dart chimed in. Exactly. And the tests we do will pick those up, Hack said simply, and went to get back to his daydreaming out the window, but Drada spoke again. You're talking about trick and combat skill tests, aren't you? The ones that give your trick and combat number out of 0 and 100? So, if so, then I've done them before and my trick level is 0. Nino, Nino, Nino! Dart's eyes sprung to Drada as she imitated a fire engine siren. Drada shifted in her seat, trying to get as far away from the human alarm system as possible. How do you even know about those? Hack asked, his eyes narrowed. A serious look on his face, like there was a serious look on his face, like there wasn't a young girl bouncing up and down on her seat, saying Nino. Drada could only be amazed at his ignoring skills. Is it not common knowledge? Drada looked at him nervously, trying her best to ignore Dart as well. No, it's not. The tests are kept secret, and only allowed to be used by us and some scientists who want to research where tricks come from and what influences them. There's a fear that a level system on powers would have a harsh effect on society. He lectured her. Like all the low levels being pissed off they're not high levels and ganging up and wars and stuff. Dart simplified, ceasing her bouncing and yelling. This specifically, I'm gonna say this one before we end up thinking. This bit specifically is inspired by a certain scientific railgun that has a level system on the powers, and it does very much inspire like the non-powered people to get into bad stuff. So that's why that is there. So where did you take your tests? Hack ordered the answer from her. He dreaded what Drada could answer. It was all very sensitive, very secret, and he was terrified of the idea that if Drada had taken it, a random person he'd never met, then it was more widespread than any of them had thought. None of your business, Drada answered, and Hack's eyes narrowed, gritting his teeth. He was about to yell at her, tell her just how much this would affect the world, when she added, I won't tell anyone about them, but I won't tell you how I know about them. I will say, at least, I don't know anyone who knows about them, nor have I told anyone. Hack sighed. It would take an idiot to not hear the finality in that statement. It frustrated him, but he wasn't getting any more information out of her, so he dropped it. At least she said she wouldn't tell anyone. So... Dart cut in, her eyes curious. If your trick level was 0, what was your combat level? 85. The reaction to this were very different. Awesome! Dart's eyes looked up. Hack took a few moments. He stared at Dreda, looked her up and down, and finally spoke. 85? Did I hear that right? Yeah, 85. Dreda repeated for him. Bullshit! He snapped. There is no way someone without a trick could get that high. Even the highest recorded combat level there is 73. And evidently you have every recorded test of combat level, Dreda said dryly, and Hack's eyes narrowed. Burn! Dart giggled. Hack sat back in his chair, moving his eyes away to the window and crossing his arms. Words are hard. Words are really hard sometimes. We'll find out when you take the test, he grumbled, refusing to admit defeat. Dreda smirked, finally relaxing a bit. And I am finally taking a drink. Relaxation was short-lived, as about 5 minutes later the van came to a halt. Dart jumped from her seat as soon as her seatbelt was off, sliding open the side door with a yell of, "We are here!" Where? Dreda dreaded to ask what kind of weird base of operations she might have been taken to. Her mind went to the movies, where the heroes' bases were behind waterfalls and in caves. HQ. We'll tell you the exact location when we know you're definitely becoming a hero, Hack informed her. Dreda nodded in understanding. It made sense to keep the location a secret with so many enemies. She admitted she was a little disappointed not to hear any kind of waterworks, but she did hear an echo as Dart's feet landed on the concrete outside. "Come on, newbie girl!" Dart yelled as Hack and Dreda exited the sliding door of the van like normal people, unlike Dart, who was literally flown out. Dart is Dart. That is all I will say about Dart. Not a newbie yet, Dreda pointed out. You'll ace the tests and stuff and be a hero in no time. Dart seemed to have perfect faith in her, and Dreda wished she could share the optimism. She was starting to feel nervous. Now that the opportunity had been put in front of her, she wanted it. Being a hero didn't sound too bad. If she had the skills and could put them to good use, it would be great. What more could she want? She was scared, though. Scared her lack of trick was going to make them turn her away. Scared that somehow she was going to mess it all up. She didn't show this at all, though. On the outside, she was calm as when she broke both of Apex's arms. Distracting herself, she looked around, only to find disappointment. Even if they were underground, they clearly were not in any sort of cool hideout from the movies. They were in a car park, not far from the entrance if the slight breeze Dreda felt was anything to go by. Her eyes scanned over the expensive-looking cars. A shot in the dark told Dreda they were probably in the city centre underneath one of the skyscrapers. Only a private car park of one of those would have this many expensive cars parked up all together like a joyrider's wet dream. You must be Moon Girl. Dreda pulled her eyes away to the woman who had been waiting for them. Her eyes were as dark as her wavy brown hair, her skin a beautiful, naturally tanned colour. She stood in a tight grey business suit, the smile on her thick lips taking the edge off her sharp appearance. Am I ever going to get a name here? She glared, back to covering anxiety with annoyance, missing the woman's face soften as she saw right through her. I'm sorry. Your identity is too valuable to be given out. If you're going to become a hero, We can call you something else for now if you prefer, the woman offered. It'll do for now, I guess. Dreda resigned herself to it. But does that mean I don't get to know anyone else's names? She glanced between Dart and Hack. We have fake names we use with each other and when undercover. It means that if any of us turned traitor, or if we came across someone with a trick to look into people's minds, our identities are still safe. And as much of this is a really good thing, a really cool idea, I hate myself for it. I hate myself for these extra names, I really do. Dreda nodded. It was smart, if a little paranoid. So I'm Tim, he introduced. Lanny! Dart put her hand up. And I'm Claire, said the businesswoman. Dreda just gave a nod, hoping by the end of this she could give them a name in return. This way then, Moon. Claire turned on her impressive heels and then led them out of the underground car park. It was an awkward silence between the four. Well, except for Lanny humming some tune, eventually matching the tune of the music in the elevator when they entered. The fact that the elevators had music just showed how high class the building must be. The elevator itself showed that too. No graffiti, no chewing gum. Just a nice golden bar lining the middle of the walls and spotless mirrors for wallpaper to make it feel less like a claustrophobic metal box on string. It was making Dreda's stomach turn even more. She wasn't sure how to act somewhere like this. She felt like an alien. Like she had stumbled into a foreign country with all its own customs, and she had no idea how not to insult everyone. Have Tim and Lanny explained the test we need to run? Claire looked back, having realised she hadn't explained yet. Trick and combat tests, right? Dreda said, the little information she knew. She already knew about them, Tim added. Claire looked back shocked, but quickly recovered herself. Oh, well... You'll have to fill me in later, Tim. Tim gave a nod, and then Claire shifted her gaze to Dart. Lanny, you don't have to stay with us. Nah, I'm staying. I want to see this, the girl replied, rolling on and off her toes. Claire gave her a confused look. Okay. Dreda glanced between them. Tim and Lanny. Neither of them told Claire about her combat and trick level. Not that she was complaining. Dreda was odd, she knew that. She was an outlier in the data, she knew that. But Claire was clearly the commanding officer? Dreda tilted her head as she thought about it. Did heroes have ranks, or was Claire more senior because of her age? As much as she didn't look too old, she was clearly older than Tim and Lanny. Or was it because she was stronger than them? It may even be a case of those with high trick level command more respect. If that was the case, she was screwed. Dreda's mind ran away as she found more and more ways to worry herself when the elevator finally dinged. Ding! Dart predictably echoed, bouncing as the door opened. Brace yourself, Tim muttered to Dreda, who nodded, confused. Now, Lanny! Claire, with a stern face, took a breath, but her voice Claire, with a stern face, took a breath, but her voice was blown away. A gust of wind shot Lanny down the corridor, blowing up paper skirts and the odd unprepared person. Yeah, words are hard. But it's okay, they're fun, and they make cool stories. Dreda had to admit, if it wasn't for Tim's warning, she might have been off her feet too. Lanny, no flying in the office! Claire barked at her. Lanny turned in the air, hovering in the windy air, giggling. Come on, slowpokes! She does this when she's excited, Tim sighed, regaining his balance as Claire stepped out, one hand on her hips and the other with an extended finger, waved at Lanny with each word she said. We are not going anywhere until both of your feet are placed permanently on the ground, young lady. Hard eyes of stone glared into the 3-year-old in a teenage body, and eventually the hyper dark-skinned girl gave a sigh. She grumbled, and the unnatural indoor winds disappeared as her small red boots tapped onto the ground. What's got her so worked up? Claire gave a sigh, looking to Tim. We'll find out. Tim gave Drader a glance before moving into the hall and helping people with some of the papers they dropped. Not actually a 3-year-old. Not actually small. Young looking, not small. We have no toddler heroes, I can tell you that much. Lanny frowned deeply at him and heaved another dramatic sigh. After helping clear up Lanny's mess, they moved through the corridor and some open offices. A few people came up, asking how the heroes were and who Drader was, but introductions were stopped short before names could be mentioned. They eventually came to a large, empty, open room where there was nothing but white. The door in, and a small double metallic door on the other end of the room. Now, Claire turned to face her. I'm sorry to push you right into it, but we can't really explain anything, nor do we want any more details about you until you have done this test, for your safety and ours. So that's why you brought me here rather than let me go home. You didn't want contact information to get me later. Drader nodded, guessing the reason they didn't want any more information was the same reason they wouldn't use their real names with each other. She never imagined heroes to be so paranoid. Exactly. Claire nodded, happy to see she understood. Now, I know Tim said you knew about the tests, but what exactly... So I know what to explain. Drader hesitated as her stomach did somersaults. She was scared of telling them what she knew after Tim's reaction. She was so very scared that her knowledge was somehow wrong, that they wouldn't want her anymore, that somehow it would be illegal, even imagining herself sitting next to Apex in prison. No one should know, right? You took them before, right? She looked up to the male voice and her eyes landed on Tim. Wait, looked up? She hadn't even realised she was looking down. Glancing between the other two, Claire looked a bit concerned and Lanny was blinking her onyx eyes expectantly. Maybe she did a bit more than hesitate. She took a deep breath to calm herself and spoke. Yeah. It's a combat simulation, at least to begin with. Yes, Claire smiled. A combat simulation invented by a trickster who could manipulate computers. Drader already knew that. He worked with a science team to invent our very first holographic room simulations 10 years ago, though the systems aren't available to the public or even some government use. Drader already knew that. The actual test, as you say, is a combat simulation that tailors itself as it learns more about a person's reactions. For example, if it detects a trick, but detects that the trick isn't good in combat, it tailors for an environment where that trick can be used to its fullest. This allows for low combat scores but high trick scores. Again, Drader already knew that. Basically, it pushes you to your limits and ranks you on it, Drader simplified. Yes, Claire nodded, a bit disappointed that Drader obviously wasn't interested in hearing more about it. Do you feel ready now, or do you want to drink and rest? I'll get it over and done with now. Are you sure? Claire questioned and Drader nodded. All right then. Drader imagined to them it sounded tough that she didn't want to rest after her hostage situation, but it was by no means her being tough. She couldn't sit there and wait for this at the moment. Her mind was racing with how many things could go wrong, how many ways this day could end terribly. She'd even thought of a few ways she could end up dying. She took a breath as Claire, Tim, and Lanny left the room to get what was needed. She had to get this over sooner rather than later. The sooner she knew if her future lay here, the sooner she could calm down. Claire came back with some black pads, and Drader had to strap on her arms, legs, and a vest-like one over her body. Claire went to explain, but Drader knew. They were sensors, so the computer could know what you're doing. They were also for the projections to affect you. It wouldn't simulate pain, but if an attack was supposed to blast you back, If an attack was hard enough to move you, then the pads would try to simulate that by pushing you in the right direction. Me, Lanny, and Tim will be watching with a few others. If the simulation gets too much, you can... Others? Drada asked curiously. People who will support you if you become a hero. It's good for them to see what you can do now, rather than you having to show them later. And as I was about to say, if the simulation gets too much, just ask us for us to stop, and we will. Drayden nodded. She guessed that maybe a few people who had taken this test must have found it a shock, and gotten scared for her to say that. Good luck. Claire gave her a smile before leaving the white room. Drada found her nerves fading when she heard the machines boot up. She flexed her arms a bit and rolled her neck. It had been a while since she could go all out, and honestly, she was getting pretty excited. A black figure appeared in front of her, and Drada pulled her fist up ready. This is... Claire was about to explain, but Drada cut her off. I don't mean to be rude, but I know. You can skip the introductions. Alright, starting the simulation in 3, 2, 1. Chapter 3. Take a drink. I don't have as much to go over in chapter 2 as I did in chapter 1 when it comes to like where it came from. I can tell you that Tim's fake name, came from my boyfriend's favourite superhero, Tim Drake. Claire's is a name I like because it's the name of a childhood friend. I don't really talk too much anymore, but I've always liked the name. I have good connotations with it because of that person. I don't really have anything for Lanny. Lanny was particularly because of the meaning, actually. Let me get behind the name up for a minute. Everyone's favorite website for meanings of names, behind the name. So Lanny's name I specifically picked because it means sky, heaven, royal, and majesty in Hawaiian. Traders means something. No, not Wikipedia. Not Wikipedia. I think that's all the fun facts I have for that, to be honest. Like I said, the whole ranking system thing came mainly from a certain scientific railgun, which I went through before. That's it. I guess we'll dive straight in with chapter 3, which I don't have anything much for this one. This is just, we're just in for a lot of fighting now. Combat! The shadow made a move on Drada, charging for her, and it was at that moment her mind melted away. There was nothing. No nerves, no ifs, no buts. No possibilities of death or imprisonment. It all faded away, and her mind focused on the one thing Drada understood more than anything. Combat. She sidestepped the shadow. She sidestepped the shadow's attempt to attack, took out its feet, caught its head, and snapped it. One fast, fluid movement that would end a person's life in the blink of an eye. No trick, just clean and simple murder. The shadow disappeared with enough damage done to kill it. 30. The combat level she just showed was 30. 34, 30 to 40 were people who were skilled in combat, not fully trained, but showed skill. Purple belts in karate. The program now adjusted to the ease in which Drada dispatched her first enemy. 2 shadows appeared, one in front and one behind. She ducked under an attack from the one behind, grabbed the arm that was now above her head, and flipped the shadow onto the one in front. The shadow whose head was closest had a foot crush its ghostly skull before it even hit the ground properly. Curb stomped with force to kill, it disappeared. The other shadows sat up, hurrying to get to its feet, but a roundhouse kick to its head caused enough damage to kill it too, and it disappeared. Dreda gave a frustrated sigh. It always starts too slow. Meanwhile, there were smiles watching. I see why you brought her in. Tim ignored them as he stared at the numbers on the screen with a deep frown. 2 down, 3 appeared. 3 down, 4 appeared. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Dreda was a machine, taking down each and every one without a weapon, without a trick, and without, so far, taking a single hit. It was like some action scene from a movie, but more chaotic. In a movie, enemies came at the hero one by one. In this, shadows punched and kicked from multiple directions at once, and as if she had eyes all over her skin, like somehow she knew the future, she flawlessly dived out of the way and countered. At about 15 enemies, the room started to shift. As soon as Dreda noticed it happen, she jumped at a shadow, onto its shoulder and over the main horde. The hologram shifted while she was in the air, and she could see the area better and land just fine. When Dreda knew what it would shift to anyway, she had done this enough times to know what it did to push her to her limit, and see how dangerous she could be. A junkyard. Completely uneven ground, scattered pieces of metal of all shapes, plenty of improvised weaponry. Dreda took advantage immediately. A good enough distance away from her enemies, she had time to grab some smaller, sharp pieces beneath her and throw them to take 1 or 2 out. Then she grabbed a long pole and darted forward, closing the distance. One sweep took about 5 off their feet. One was unlucky enough to fall on the many sharp objects that made their battleground. The others stepped over as the imperfect AI mindlessly went after their target. Dreda stopped with the lethal shots for a while, using the pole to keep the shadows at bay until she had taken in her surroundings, which, to her, took a while. To anyone watching, took a few seconds. When she had a better idea of what was around, she did a sweep again, taking out enough feet to make a path out of the horde of shadows. She darted through her opening, hopping around the sharp pieces of metal and up a particular mound she spotted. As she knew they would, the shadows mindlessly followed her, so she shoved her pole down into an opening and used its leverage to rain down an avalanche of sharp metal upon them. In one move, her enemy count went down from 13 to 0. How many has she taken out now? Claire watched in a way. 106, Tim answered, simply ignoring Lanny, who was literally jumping up and down while clapping. And are those numbers right? Another woman in the room asked. System seems to be working fine, Tim said Tim said, his frown only getting deeper. Dreda had done this enough to know what happened next. There was a momentary break, as the system figured out what she already knew, her eyes darting round for something she was going to need. Her eyes eventually fixed on it, and she skidded down the now smaller mountain of scraps she was on, bouncing over the pile that had been a horde not too long ago and landed, just in time for a jet of fire to shoot at her. Luckily, she was at what she needed. The long pole she had before was abandoned in favour of a large sheet of metal. The edges were slightly bent, so she had some way to hold it up. She stomped on the end and sent it between her and the jet of fire, and held it up as she looked around for more. Some of the people in the room jumped from their seats. Even Tim sat up in shock. It's sending tricksters after her? We should stop this. Claire stood up and went to the keyboard, but Lanny grabbed her wrists. Lanny! She could get hurt. This isn't the time to... But look. Lanny nodded to the monitor. She's doing fine. Tim sat back, and the others turned to the screen. Lanny was right. Dreda was doing fine. She had taken the shield and ran forward with it, jumped over it, and kicked the fire trickster's shadow in the head. She moved out of the way of her falling shield and danced around it, grabbing the cooler side, ready to block an attack from a water trickster this time. It's like she was born to fight, isn't it? Lanny smiled. Just watching Dreda, it couldn't have been put better. It wasn't like watching someone normal fight. Someone normal would show some fear. There would be at least some terror that fire could burn them and water could drown them. Dreda held no such fear. Even when the water pressure of the attack caused her shield to fly out of her grip, and she was forced to run, no one could sense fear. When the water pressure was enough to start slicing the metal, there was no fear. As she picked up sharp pieces of metal, as she ran through them the water trickster's way. Having to put their focus on the small pieces of metal, Dreda darted towards it right behind what she had thrown. One piece of metal blocked and sent flying, then a second. Dreda jumped as the third was, and she was finally in range. There was a moment, at least to Dreda, of time slowing. The shadowy trickster moved to attack her next. She doubted the computer felt the excitement of this moment, the gamble of battle. Who can pull the trigger first? Can Dreda land her kick before a torrent of water drowns her? That was the question that the room of people watching were asking themselves. But Lanny and strangely Tim had the same thought. Is there any doubt? As the water started to appear, Dreda's foot connected before it could be used as a weapon. If the shadow had been a person, there would have been a loud crack as her foot collided with what would have been its temple, causing more than enough brain damage to make the shadow disappear. Another shadow started to appear, and she watched it warily, but had a feeling she knew what was going to happen. It normally happened about now. Even before she finished the thought, the room turned back to plain white all of a sudden. Dreda stumbled as the uneven ground became even again. She took in a few deep breaths, bringing herself out of battle mode and back to reality. Sadly, that did make her notice how tired and burning her there. I still have so many mistakes in here. Her tired and burning muscles. Oh, I'm rusty, she noted, stretching a bit to try wind down. Guess who was an idiot and didn't refill her water bottle? Me! I'm gonna have to go get that filled in a minute, but not yet. It's fine. Next time we finish a chapter. You can start taking off the sensors if you want. Tim's voice came through the speakers. Claire's coming down to get you now. Oh yeah, the reason she took the test in the first place. All the nerve suddenly came back to her, and she felt like she wanted to puke. Dreda had to take another few deep breaths before starting to take off the sensors. It would be the moment of truth after this. After the redhead had pretty much taken off all the sensors, Claire came in with a bottle of water. That was amazing! You probably want this, though. Thanks. Dreda happily took the bottle after throwing off the last sensor. With a fast flick of the wrist, the cap came off, and she downed a few gulps. Come on, Claire began to lead out. There are some people who I want you to meet. Slightly annoyed she didn't get a yes, you're a hero, or no, get the fuck out, you freak of nature. There's no in between there for her. Dreda just followed quietly, still hoping to get an answer soon. They climbed some stairs, followed some corridors, and rounded 2 corners. Eventually, they got to a room where she saw Lanny and Tim, as well as 2 others she didn't recognize. The room was sizable, but dully lit. Wires crisscrossed the floor. It was much warmer than the corridor that led to it, likely because of the giant servers that ran the simulations. Anxiety, the line. A few chairs were dotted around, but only Tim was sitting down at the keyboard, looking grumpily at the monitor. He glanced at Dreda a moment, ignoring the smirking Lanny as he said, I thought you said your combat score was 85. Dreda tilted her head. Did it come out lower? I mean, I guess I could be a bit rusty. Drada couldn't help but be genuinely concerned. She really didn't like the idea of getting weaker, but Tim, with a huff, turned the screen towards her. Trick level 0. Combat level 87. The screen read, and it was probably the first time they'd seen Drada smile happily. As you can see, Claire pointed out, you can clearly handle yourself, but you should be able to become a hero, but it's fine, Claire, the shorter woman in the room said, beaming. It's fine. But what? Drada snapped at them. I don't mean to sound discriminatory, but it's your trick level. Drada felt her heart jump off a cliff and smack down to the pit of her stomach. They couldn't do this to her, right? She could do it. She could be a good hero, and she could likely kick the ass of every hero here, just because she didn't have a trick. You see, Claire carried on, and as Drada tried not to show her disappointment. As you probably know, there's still a lot of fear and uncertainty around tricksters. Heroes have helped with that. It's given a way to show people that we're not just scary monsters with powers. The vision of a hero at the moment is that they can only be these people with powers, and I know that's not true, but that image is what's helping people start to accept tricksters. Claire gave an awkward sigh. What I mean to say is that if someone who was not a trickster was to become a hero, it may not help tricksters standing in society at the moment. I'm sorry. Drada just nodded and looked at the floor. She could understand what they were saying. It was rough for tricksters right now. They were still very demonized by the media. No matter what the heroes did, villains pulled the image of tricksters down into the darkness they sank to in their schemes. They were bullied outcasts at the moment, and Drada didn't want to make it that worse by taking away the one thing they had. At the same time, though, there was a large part of her that just wanted to cry. She really did want to be a hero. She knew she would be really good at it. She knew she could do it, but she couldn't doom people for it either. Society doesn't have to know she doesn't have a trick, said the short woman, still beaming. Trish, Claire went to talk, but was interrupted. Claire, the girl clearly has what it takes, and besides, look at the poor baby. She's nearly in tears. As soon as she said that, Drada panicked a moment and tried the best she could to turn her face to stone again. But then Trish hopped over and gave her a hug, and that partly built stone face crumbled, turning into one of slight panic. Tim couldn't help but snigger a bit. This poor baby. She's got so much anxiety. Trish let go and got off her tippy toes, bring her height to just under Drada's shoulder, which surprised Drada because she wasn't that tall either. Trish took a few steps back so that she wasn't looking up at Drada so much and spoke her proposal. They've been calling you Moon Girl, right? She asked. Yeah, Drada nodded. Do you like it? Is it growing on you? Because I like it. Drada went to speak, but Tim realized something. This is Trish, by the way. She helps build and maintain a hero's media image. Yes, I do. And I like the whole moon theme. The woman's brain was already off, it seemed, as she struck a pose, her body leaning forward and her arms covering most of her face bar her eyes. She declared in a dramatic fashion, "The mysterious Moon Girl." Claire was suddenly smiling too. I see. So it would be part of her image that her trick is not known. Trish got out of the pose and pushed some of her sandy blonde hair out of her face. Exactly. And even if we have to reveal her trick, we can say it's heightened reflexes, strength, or speed. After what we just witnessed, it's perfectly believable. In fact, if I didn't have the test to prove it, I would call you a liar and say you did if you said you didn't have a trick. So, does that mean... Drada wasn't sure a few seconds ago, She was sure she was going home without a job, back to square one with daily visits to the job centre. You can become a hero. Claire finally gave her the confirmation, and Dreda struggled not to laugh. Not because she found it funny, but because she was so relieved. She got her answer, and it was the one she wanted. She had a job. Something to do with her life rather than aimlessly wandering to the shops, the job centre and home, as she had been doing for a long time. She could help people. She could make a difference now. Her life had a meaning now, and she wasn't going to let it go for anything. Thank you. Told you so. Laddie clapped as most of the room smiled warmly at the blushing and smiling Dreda. Aww, sweetie. Dreda's very full day was ended there without being introduced to the tall guy who was the final and very quiet member of the room. Claire gave her a new phone for them to contact her on, and she was called a taxi home. Although Dreda was raring to start, they insisted that she went home and got some rest first. She had just been in a hostage situation, then quickly in a combat training simulator that was not known for going easy on someone. Dreda sighed and sat back in the taxi, not even thinking about looking where they were going and where she actually had been the past few hours. She was just trying to get her mind to settle. She was going to be a hero. She couldn't help but smile when she thought it. She felt a little bubble of excitement when she did. She couldn't wait. But at the same time, they were right. As soon as she sat back in the taxi, she realized how tired she was. She'd panicked a lot about her interview this morning, panicked more about the potential of becoming a hero, and then had to push herself to her limits in the training simulation. She gave a good stretch and sighed, calming her mind from the eventful day. Dreda is a hero! Yay! Success. What's not a success is the fact that I have no water. BRB. It'll be really fast, I promise. But I really need more hydration. hydrated. And back. Can we get another chapter in? What do you think? I think so. I back, yes. Like I said, not much to add about, like, extra sneaky little writing things in that chapter. Trish was a name that I got from a college teacher, but that was about it. I also like that she's a midget. I love her so much. I love them all. I love every character, even Apex. Like, I love my children, even the problematic ones. Yeah, mostly just fighting. Oh no, actually no. There is one fun thing I can say about that chapter. Oh hi. Oi! Stop it. I'm trying to give you cool lore, and you're just being nice. So the fight scene in that one, it wasn't directly inspired by, but some of the lines and stuff were inspired by Danganronpa If, which was a light novel visual novel built into the game. You're nice, you stupid dinosaur. Yeah, it was a visual novel built into the game. I don't want to say too much about it, in case you don't play Dangan and you have no idea about Dangan, because it's always best to go into Danganronpa as blind as you can. But there was a particular fight scene in Danganronpa If that very much helped me write that scene. If you know, you know. If you know, you know. Yeah. Get yelled at for being nice. Anyway, we can get in one more chapter. These chapters are kind of chunky. I started doing a lot shorter chapters later on while I was reading, because I found when I read books I like small chapters. Small bite-sized chapters, because it's just so much easier. And you feel more, like you're achieving more when you're reading, when you've gotten through a few chapters, even if they're small. Like, I don't know. Something about my brain. My monkey brain. Gaming monkey brain feels like it's read more and achieved more if you've gotten through more chapters. But, chapter 4. Rosa Hale. Teen Wolf references coming. I was also watching Teen Wolf at the time. That's also courtesy of my boyfriend. So if anyone's watched Teen Wolf, you'll get the references. The taxi pulled up to the small apartment complex in the cheap part of town. Drader paid the driver and sent him off with a thank you. For the last 3 years, Teen Wolf. For the last 3 years, Drader had called this council-ignored square of apartments home. The plant boxes in the middle were full of weeds, and the benches were covered in bird crap. The pavements she now walked were cracked, spotted with discarded chewing gum, glass shards, and sometimes she even saw specks of blood. It was a sad sight, but it was home. Sadly, it was also home to the odd drug dealer, ex-prisoner, abusive boyfriend, and more. Drader had no trouble with them, though. They soon learned that she was not one they could push around, unless there was money involved. Trying to pay rent and live off what she'd been given by the government was difficult at times. Every so often, she took a job offer from local gangs as hired muscled, just to top her off. In this day and age, most gangs tried to get their hands on tricksters for this sort of thing, some gangs going as far as kidnapping children to get what they need. Drader couldn't help but frown when she thought about it. This was a dangerous world for children who found they had tricks. It wasn't just gangs that were interested in them. But she shook her head at it. She'd hopefully never have to take one of those shady jobs again. Though she had to admit she wasn't sure. She didn't exactly know what kind of salary a hero got, or even if they got anything with the amount of collateral damage from their adventures. She pondered this as she made her way over the square to her ground floor flat. She rummaged in her pockets to find her... She rummaged in the pockets of her mid-length black coat for her keys. Just when she found them, she heard a "Trader!" It was a familiar, distinctly old voice that Drader happily turned around to. Her eyes landed on the woman who popped her head out of next door's entrance. She was clearly quite old. Wrinkles had begun to take over, but the masterfully put on makeup helped. She looked at Drader with a warm smile, her hair cut a short, grey, carefully curled crown of worldly experience. "Miss Miggins," Drader greeted. "Martha!" She rolled her eyes. "How many times must I tell you to call me Martha?" "Sorry," Drader said simply. It was the usual with the two. Martha didn't understand it, but Drader had respect of her elders somewhat harshly drilled into her, to the point she was very uncomfortable calling someone as old as Martha by her first name. She'd rather have this banter every time they meet than actually call her by her first name. "You're home a lot later than expected," she noted, her warm, happy to see you smile turning somewhat concerned. "Yeah, things were interesting today." Drader gave a lopsided smile. "Interesting but good by that look," Martha beamed. "Some beef stew is ready. I'll put the kettle on and you tell me all about it." Drader knew what was going to happen and couldn't help but smile. "I'll just feed Snickers and get changed. I'll be right over." Drader opened the door. "Bring Snickers over. I'm sure he missed you." Martha ordered, then disappeared back into her apartment. "All right," Drader agreed and pushed open the door to her own home. She didn't even get a chance to close the door behind her before there was the sound of light tapping on the hard wooden floors and the repeated sound like a broken record. Meow, 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 meow. "Hello, Snickers." Drader closed the door before turning to the cat that knew what time it was. As soon as Drader looked at the mostly white cat with patches of brown, Snickers realized the attention, carrying on his sing-song meowing as he rubbed himself on her legs. Meow, meow. Drader bent down and picked up the purring cat, rubbing her face into his fur. As he reached out a paw and touched her face. "I know," she walked in with the cat. "I'm not normally gone that long. I'm sorry if you got a bit lonely." The cat just purred and kneaded its claws into Drader's coat. She carried the small tomcat through the living room into the bedroom and popped him on the bed. "I'm just going to get changed and then we're going to Miss Miggins's for tea," she told the cat as she got changed, despite protests to feed him now. Snickers was forced to watch the young woman swap work attire for more comfortable jeans and plain t-shirt, then forced through the torture of her picking up his food and his bowl and putting them in a bag. Then worse, he was picked up messily with one hand as she carried him through the door, attempted to lock it behind her again, and headed over to Miss Miggins's door. She walked into what was pretty much the same apartment layout-wise. There were some more added features to help with Martha's degenerating mobility, but other than that, Drader knew exactly where to go to find Martha. She plopped the struggling cat down, who, after all that torture, was no longer happy to see Drader, and glared at her over his shoulder. "I'm gonna feed you now," she told him. Just as she expected, when she walked into the main room, the small two-person table was set up with cutlery and 2 steaming cups of tea. "Do you want any help?" Drader called into the kitchen as she fought off Snickers, who was trying to get his head into the food tin before she'd even put it in the bowl. "No thanks, I'm just dishing up. Be ready in a mo." "Okay." Drader just agreed, but As soon as she was done with Snickers, she went into the kitchen and ghosted the old woman as she served the 2 steaming plates of beef stew. "You didn't have to follow me. I carried them to the table. I haven't broken any plates this week," the old woman said bitterly. "Well, can never be too safe," Dreda shrugged. Martha was not growing old without a fight, and Dreda knew it. She didn't always know when to stop. After a day of shopping and cooking dinner, when she got in, sometimes Miss Biggerson's wrists would give out. "But anyway, what happened?" Martha started, eager to hear about everything. Dreda took a breath and went through the story she figured out while changing. "Well, I went for the interview today and I didn't think they were going to pick me. I've got nothing on my CV and the other candidates looked a bit better for it." She saw Martha give a deep frown and wasn't sure if it was for putting herself down or annoyed at the company for not hiring her. But she stayed silent to hear the rest, so Dreda continued. "But I had a stroke of luck. Well, luck for me." She gave a small smile. "On my way out, there was a scuffle at the front desk. There was a man being pushy and rude, but he was quite strong, so security was having trouble with him." "And you showed him some manners," Martha said with a proud smile. "Well," Drayden nodded, "maybe a bit roughly escorted him from the premises." "Ah, that's my girl," Martha smiled. Dreda shook her head at the feisty old woman. "So after that, security talked to me. Apparently they had an opening, so I had an interview right there and got the job." So was Dreda's cover story. From then on, if someone asked her about her new job, she said she was a security guard at an important office building, a publisher that dealt with magazines and games and all sorts of different media. Important names went in and out often, or so she found out the next day. Claire gave a nod of approval at her cover story. "Well thought out, explains odd hours, and any bumps and bruises," she praised. "Did you think up a name?" A name for the other heroes to call her out of costume, so that her hero life could be kept as far away as it could possibly be kept from her normal life. She brought it up at the small 2-person dinner table with Miss Miggins. She had been told to think about it, but she had no idea, so she thought, what would be the harm in asking the person who knew her the best? "What name would you call me if not Dreda?" she asked out of the blue in a moment of silence. "Odd question." Martha put her fork down to think. Dreda knew she wouldn't question, rather she'd just take up the challenge. "Let me think. Rose, maybe?" "Rose?" Dreda repeated, a small nod as she considered it. "Well, you're a pretty young lady with beautiful red hair, and by God you have thorns." Dreda smiled. "But it's too simple. Martha took some more time to consider. Martha came up with a few that night, but Dreda liked Rose. As Martha said, though, it was too simple, so she played around with it in her head that night, and could finally answer Claire with Rosa. Claire nodded again in approval. Bit of a unique flair without being too odd. "It's nice to meet you, Rosa." Rosa had been told to report bright and early for her first day in, as Claire had called it, Hero Boot Camp. Claire met her outside. "Come on." The brunette turned on her impressive heels once more. "Let's get you sorted with a security badge and whatnot." When Dreda entered the building yesterday, she entered in the underground car park, so she had no idea the size of the building. When she left, she was so drained and amazed at what had happened she hadn't bothered to look. So now was the first time really taking in the large building that stood tall between many skyscrapers in the business area of the city. They entered from the busy street into the spacious entryway. The sound very quickly going from noisy to almost complete silence when the automatic glass doors shut behind them. Claire's heels clicked on the marble floors as she crossed the large open room dotted with soft furnishings for clients to wait on and plants with large green leaves. It definitely gave the feel of serious business. It made Drada feel underdressed in simple jeans and a striped blue and white t-shirt reminiscent of a sailor. She wondered if she should have dressed like she did yesterday for her fake interview. Claire stopped at the front desk, Drada stopping beside her, watching as she spoke to the woman on the other side. The woman passed some forms to Claire, and she started to fill them out. Unsure how long it would take, Drada's eyes wandered, landing on a pair just coming in that made her feel a lot better about what she was wearing. A woman and a girl that were very clearly related. Both had very distinctive green eyes and oddly blue hair. The older one, her hair bright sky blue, sporting a very low-cut pink tank top, showing off her impressive bosom, spotted Drada looking. After seeing her with Claire, she gave her a smile and a nod. Drada had already figured out who they were, as the older one pointed her out to the younger, whose hair was darker and much longer. Blue strands fell all the way to her hips, despite it being tied back in a low ponytail. And her outfit was just as risque, a green corset under a black waistcoat, and a pair of brown shorts. No, you gotta go. Oh, that's okay, you got a life. I'll probably be stopping after this chapter anyway, so if you wanted to go back to the VOD to catch up, then you won't have much to catch up on. It'll be fine. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you for enjoying my story so far. Have a good day. The younger gave her a wave before the two showed their passes to security and left Drada's vision. The Wild Sisters, Drada stated. Well, you're really cool and nice, and you're great for being here, and you also make me happy, so leave, okay? Bye. Too many nice things being said. This is the internet. It's supposed to be mean. The Wild Sisters were a heroic duo. From what Drada knew, the younger's hero title was Wild Beat due to her sound-based trick. The elder was called Wild Warrior. Her trick was not as easily recognized. She told the press it was the same as her sister, she just was a bit subtler. They're not very good at hiding the whole secret identity thing, huh? Claire commented as she filled out the forms. What are you going to use for a last name? Hale, Drada replied, having picked it from a TV show she liked. Now there's your Teen Wolf theme. There's your Teen Wolf reference. Claire nodded and continued to fill out the form. I always assumed they wore wigs or something when they were in their superhero outfits. Claire sighed. That's their argument when we tell them to stop dyeing their hair. They say it's because of that assumption that people won't think it's them, but you just proved them wrong. Claire straightened with a smug face that she now had fuel to her argument. You mind filling in a few of the extra details? She turned the forms to her and handed her a pen. Drada nodded, scanning the document before her. Claire had filled most of it with details of her new security guard position, and even started filling out the personal details by filling in the obvious stuff like gender and name. That left date of birth, 10/10/94. Why is it 10/10/94? Because I just 10/10. I don't know why I wanted it to be 10/10. I wanted her to be born in spooky month. And I liked the idea of the month and the day being the same. There's no other particular reason, I won't lie. Phone number and a few other details. Done. She called, and Claire came over, gave everything a double check, then handed it over to the receptionist. You should have your security card by the end of the day. Until then, stick close to someone, because it's hard to get around without one, Claire explained, turning towards security. Alright. They passed the electronic security point where the guards were stationed, then proceeded further into the building. After Claire showed them her pass, once through, Dreda saw what Claire meant by hard to get around. It felt like every other door Claire was having to slap her pass on an electronic pad to get through. So, what am I going to be doing today? Dreda asked, curious. The two had made it down a long hallway and stepped into the familiar mirrored elevator again, which... Sorry, I lost it. I lost my flow. The two had made it down a long hallway and stepped into the familiar mirrored elevator in which, again, Claire had to use her security pass to operate. Dreda tilted her head, trying to recall Claire, Tim, or Lanny using their passes yesterday. She couldn't, but then she'd been pretty stressed at the time. I'm not going to lie, it's going to be a busy week for you. First, we'll talk to our marketing people and costume designers, get your image finalized. While they are coming up with ideas and making your costume, you'll be meeting the heroes that are here. After that, you'll hit the books, Claire briefly explained. The books? Dreda repeated, not expecting reading to be on the agenda. It's required that you know all there is to know about all villains we have on file, so you are able to identify them quickly in the field. Know your enemy, Dreda nodded, understandingly. But that's not all. We expect you to learn at least the basics about the rest of us too, so that if we end up working together, we have more knowledge of what the other is capable of. So we don't end up falling over each other. But learning about all the heroes and villains so far, I'm guessing it turns into a lot of paperwork. Dreda liked how logical things were. She liked the reasons she had for having to do this, but at the same time she couldn't help but be somewhat intimidated by the amount of paperwork. She wasn't exactly academic. Her reading and writing level were that of a 10-year-old. Basic. That it does, Claire nodded, smiling. Your boot camp will last as long as it needs for you to get through that information, as well as building up a workout routine to make sure you stay in shape. How long does it normally last? Dreda asked, wondering why she was smiling. Depends on the person. Those of us with more academic skills only took a few days, she answered. You and Tim, Dreda guessed, and Claire smiled, not wanting to show off with an answer, although Tim held the record for fastest time, not her. Then her face darkened as she continued. Then there are those who would much rather bang their heads against a wall than read a single page. Laddie, and at least one of the wilds, Dreda guessed with a smirk as she pictured it. Pandora was pulled through it by her sister being a slave driver, and Laddie. The look on Claire's face, an exasperated sigh as she remembered having to keep Lanny still long enough to read through all, was more than enough for Dreda to pity the woman. She holds the record at 2 months. Not much to beat then, Dreda felt a bit more confident. She was pretty sure, even with her basic understanding of English, she wouldn't take 2 months on the work. Or at least she hoped not. She could imagine herself dying of boredom if she had to do nothing but read for 2 months. Exactly, so take your time with it. It doesn't matter how long you take. Claire gave her a reassuring smile. She eventually led to a boardroom, which would be the first stop on her hero boot camp. It was spacious, with a blackboard that nearly took up an entire wall, and a projector pointed that way. A large table took up most of the room, with several large black chairs around it. Claire looked at her watch. We're a bit early. Trish and Vince will be here in about 10 minutes, and we'll start the meeting about your hero image. Until then, feel free to sit down and relax for a bit. Dreda just nodded, taking a seat in one of the large black chairs, discovering They spin. I can imagine Lanny's first reaction to these. She thought out loud, picturing the girl using her trick to spin the chair to the point it breaks and trying to resist the childish urge to do it herself. Because who doesn't like a spinny chair? Especially if you're not someone who works in an office space. Or has one at your desk every day. Obviously, she would have to spin the good old-fashioned way, though. Spot the odd chair out, you'll know which one she was in. Feel free to ask me anything since we have some free time. I mean, things will get explained today, but I expect there might be something bugging you. Also, tea, coffee, or water? Claire asked from a drink station in the corner. That was home to a modest kettle and a stack of mugs. Tea with 2 sugars, please. Drada said, finding herself beginning to relax around Claire. One second. Need to blow my nose. Back. She spotted the chair where Lanny would have sat. It was still a big black spinning chair, but you could tell it was a slightly different model. It was a subtle difference, but noticeable. Listening to the bubble of the kettle, Drada tried to think. Was there anything that was bugging her so much it couldn't wait? It was maybe a bit selfish, but there was one thing. I understand what I'm getting into, danger-wise and stuff, but I am wondering how heroes make their money. I mean, I'm not doing this for the money, but heroes gotta eat. Claire interrupted her, seeing Drada trying to dig herself out of a hole she never made in the first place. Anxiety. Heroes get most of their money from merchandising, advertising, and sponsorships, like VTubers. After the gentle wind chime sound of the tea being stirred, it was brought over, and Claire sat next to her, which Drada appreciated. It was going to make her less nervous meeting new people. I will warn you now, collateral damage comes out of our pay. Well, collateral we cause. If it's the villain's fault, we don't have to pay. Claire pushed the tea in a plain white mug in front of her, whereas Claire had a grey one with purple spirals. A design Drada placed instantly. Missed Paragon mug, she noted, and Claire gave a cheeky smile. See, I'm much better at the whole secret identity thing, she said, taking a swig of the steaming black coffee, amused as she watched the ball drop with Drada. You're Miss Paragon? The redhead flailed as her balance escaped the building. Claire had to move her mug away from her so she didn't knock it over. Drada scrambled to get her balance back again, barely avoiding meeting the floor. She looked away, about ready to die from embarrassment with that reaction. I didn't expect that much of a reaction. Claire couldn't help but laugh. You're a fan, I take it. You saved me 3 years ago. I don't expect you to remember. You probably save a lot of people, Drada admitted, now slightly less comfortable with Claire, knowing she was her hero. I am sorry, Claire frowned a bit. I'll admit, I don't, but I'm glad I got to meet you again. I'm sorry you got caught up with another villain, though. It's fine. Got me here, didn't it? Drada shrugged. I suppose. Claire agreed as the door opened. Good morning! Trish walked in, her arms full of folders and a laptop, by the looks of it. Drada tilted her head, wondering how the short bottle blonde opened the door with all that, until she saw the larger man behind her, holding the door open. Drada bottle blonde. I just realized. I said she was a sandy blonde, didn't I, before? Admitting to my own mistakes and forgetting character hair colours. I think she's a bottle blonde from here on in, though. So, I mean, she could be a bottle sandy blonde. All I'm admitting is that she's not a natural blonde in this, so it could just be her roots are showing, to be fair. To be fair. Until she saw a larger man behind her holding the door open. Drader remembered seeing the man yesterday and assumed he was Vince, as Claire had mentioned him earlier. He was tall, muscular, and bold. Drader didn't want to insult him, but he looked straight out of prison and very out of place in the smart, short-sleeved navy blue shirt he wore that showed off his arm tattoos. She was happy that none of the tattoos said Mom or had any naked ladies. In fact, they were oddly familiar. Runes is what Drader would call them. Old, strange symbols strung together, looping around his tree trunk like limbs. Assuming she doesn't piss the guy off, she made a mental note to ask him about them eventually. The two entered, and Trish dumped her stuff on the boardroom table. Do you have a name now? Her head snapped to Drader. It took Drader a few seconds to realize what she meant. Oh, Rosa, she answered, and Trish giggled. Don't worry. We all got a bit confused by our new names for a bit. You'll get used to it, Claire reassured. Trish took a seat and started sorting through the mess of paper while Vince threw the kettle on again. Indeed, Trish echoed as she organized all her things. All the things. That's a lot of stuff, Drader said, wondering what in the world half of it was. It's just notes and research I did last night to make things go as smoothly as possible. Vince finished making the tea and brought them over again in superhero-themed mugs, more specifically Wild Sister-themed. Right then, Trish called things... I'm definitely starting to lose it. I don't know how long I've got left in this chapter. I may have to stop mid-chapter, potentially. I'm running a lot longer than I normally would. But it's fine. It's fine. Trish called things ready to start when her Wild Beat mug was placed in front of her, a green design with musical notes scattered through it. How much do you know about what heroes do, besides the whole fighting crime thing? Trish asked to see where they needed to start. They tend to go on TV a lot, and they have to do that show to keep up on the news about them. Drader tried to think about where she had seen heroes other than the news. Hero Bulletin, Trish nodded. You see, what we try to do is make our heroes celebrities. We want you in the public eye. We want people to go, oh, Moon is on, I'll watch that. Trish went on explaining media, but it all went over Drader's head. It was so much more complicated than she imagined. All this targeting and demographics and stuff was all another language. Trish, I don't think Rosa needs to know that. Claire saved her. Oh, we're doing the whole here's your image, off you go thing, Trish asked. What? Drader was lost. You see, some heroes prefer to talk over their image and decide it themselves. Others prefer I build them their image and they just go with it. I mean, you can still say no if you pick the second option. It just means I have to think of something new, which, don't worry, that's my job. Trish gave a smile. Right, I don't really know enough about this stuff to be able to help with it at all. Drader nodded, feeling like she was at least a bit closer to being on the same page. No problem. Trish gave a smile, trying to make Drader feel better. Right then. Trish faffed around with papers and pushed the laptop Vince's way, who wordlessly moved his pink Wild Warrior mug out of the way and started plugging it in to ports built into the table. Moon Girl, Trish spoke. That's the name you want to take if you're okay with that. I mean, you might not like being called girl when you get older, so you could go with Mistress Moon or Moon Warrior or something like that. I'm happy with Moon Girl. Drader gave a shrug, convinced that in this line of work she wasn't going to live long enough to get annoyed at being called girl. Alright then, Trish clapped. Vince started the laptop as the projector in the room fired up. After a minute or so, the projector threw up an image of Trish's very flowery desktop background at a large blank wall, With a few clicks, Trish pulled up a simple symbol, a crescent moon. This is the usual symbol associated with the moon, made by the Greeks at the same time as the symbols for the 12 zodiac. It makes sense to use it as the symbol for moon girls, since you've noticed most heroes have a symbol. Trish explained the image. Drayden nodded. It made sense, and yes, she knew all heroes had a symbol. Wild Beat had a treble clef, Wild Warrior had 2 intertwined W's, Dark Tornado had a bullseye, and so on. Sounds good, Drayden agreed, and Trish continued. Right, okay, then, for your image, as we spoke of before, we want you to go quite mysterious. I think you'll like it. In any appearance you make, and when you talk to the press, I don't want you to say much. If you can, I would like you to keep to short answers, maybe sometimes blunt answers, and act tough. Tough? Drayden repeated, tilting her head. She had been called tough many times, but she wondered how one acted tough. Yes, Trish nodded. It'll be a good role model for young ladies to be tough and, well, you are a pretty little thing. The strong feminine with the right costume will attract some male attention as well. Not all, but a good amount. I have sex appeal. Was Drayden's thought on that? Miss Miggins had called her pretty before, but male attention was an odd thought. Most were too scared of her to hit on her, or at least that's what she told herself, rather than bashing on her confidence. What little confidence she has. Miss Miggins would hit her with her walking stick when she spoke badly of herself too much. Violent positive reinforcement! We stand, Miss Miggins. And costumes are down to Vince here. Trish looked at the thickly built man, and for the first time, Drayden heard him speak. Name's Vince. Good to meet you. I know I don't seem like the type, but I design and help make heroes' costumes, he said in a gruff voice, like it was a practice line. Drayden had to admit, pinning a dress to a mannequin was the last thing she expected a man like him to be doing. But she had no right to judge. People did what they did, and he seemed surprised that Drayden didn't have much of a reaction. But thinking about it, Lanny probably fell off her chair, and the Wild Sisters definitely laughed, so Drayden could imagine why. Nice to meet you too. Drayden gave an uncertain glance to Claire before introducing herself. I'm Rosa. Vince gave a nod and pulled out a notebook from his pocket. We have your symbol, so I only have 2 questions. Do you have any color preferences? He began. Drayden tried to think, picturing her wardrobe in her head. I usually stick to blue and purples? He nodded. And this is a question I only have to ask the ladies. How revealing are you comfortable with? Revealing? Drayden frowned. She wasn't exactly modest, but she didn't exactly like the idea of fighting crime in a swimsuit. Not very? He made a note. Don't worry, I'll make sure you're pretty covered up. But it does need to be sexy for the whole mysterious thing, Trish added. Right. Vince said simply, flipping the little book closed and standing and leaving. He'll come back to you with some designs soon. Other than that, that's all we need. We'll get on planning your debut, Trish beamed. Thanks, Drayden made sure to say, since they were putting a lot of effort into making sure Drayden became a popular hero. That's my job, don't worry about it. Trish waved her hand before gathering up her things and leaving too. Claire and Drayden sat in silence for a few moments to let Drayden calm down a bit. Sorry about Trish, Claire finally said. She gets excited about a new project. She seems to enjoy what she does, Drayden said simply. They both do, as quiet as Vince is about it. I don't mean to be rude about him, but I didn't expect him to be the costume designer. Claire smiled. No one does, but I'm glad you didn't say anything. I'm sure he appreciates it too. Dreda nodded, glad she handled it correctly. She really didn't want to piss the guy off. Not because she couldn't kick his ass, but because she really wanted to ask about those tattoos one day. So what's next? Dreda asked. Meet and greet, a tour at the same time. Meet and greet and a tour at the same time. Don't worry about remembering every name. You won't be able to meet every hero today as some are out on patrol. Claire got to her feet. Dreda nodded, dreading this part. They left what Dreda learned was boardroom 2 of 3, out into a corridor which connected all 3. This led out into the press office, which maintained Hero's official websites, wrote for the TV show, and handled any calls from papers and news on heroic deeds. There were far too many names in this room for Dreda to remember, though she kept in mind you could get to Trish's office from here. The next section was entering the costume design section. Dreda saw Vince sketching some designs out and met a few of his team. The next section was for the heroes themselves. Here we can work out, train with each other, chill out, and have a bit of downtime, even get ourselves patched up, Claire explained. How many heroes do we have in the city? Dreda only just thought to ask, as she didn't see many people around. You make 8, I think? Obviously, other cities have their own heroes, and even their own system for dealing with them, as much as some are struggling, Claire answered as they passed into an entertainment room with some added TVs, comfy seats, and drinks machines. Dreda nodded. The news had told her that much. Some countries were struggling to adjust. Some even outlawed acts of heroism, but then struggled with the villainy. The world was a bit of a mess in general. But Dreda didn't get the time to think about it. Oi! 87! Alright, I need to try. I have an American spur. 88. American. 87. Hey, 87! Dreda looked around to the out-of-place American accent invading the room and heard a sigh from Claire as she spotted the older of the Wild sisters. 87? It took Dreda a while to realize the woman was referring to her combat level. Selena, can't this wait? Claire moved between Dreda and the tall, blue-haired woman, as if trying to defend her from a threat. American. No, I mean, your talk. I can't do it. American. Your tour can wait, right? I mean, your tour can wait, right? What is that? And I can show her the way to the gym. It's getting worse. Selena answered simply. What's this about? Dreda asked before Claire could answer, not liking the feeling of being defended. Claire was cut across again by Selena, causing the woman's usually calm and friendly face to slowly wrinkle with frustration. You're 87. I'm 73. Now, why is it starting to sound Yorkshire-ish now? What the fudge cake? I can't do accents, I really can't. American. Highest combat level till you got here. I'm gonna try though. We're gonna do it. It's a good thing the American left the chat, isn't it? You want to fight? Claire was unaware of it, but at that moment there was an understanding between Selena and Dreda. At first Dreda had thought her rude, barging in like this and disrespecting Claire, but she would be exactly the same if something like this happened. Having been the strongest for so long, the idea of finding someone stronger than you is something to dream of. It's a chance to get stronger, a chance to get so close to losing, a chance to have fun. Even though Selena wasn't stronger than her, 73 was one of the highest combat levels Dreda had come across, and she felt excitement start to build. You don't have to, Rosa. Don't let Selena bully you into it. Claire gave a glare to Selena before turning back to Dreda. But I can fight her, right? I mean, we can do the tour first if you want, but... Dreda asked, hopeful and somewhat amused by Claire's surprised reaction. She clearly was not the combat junkie that Dreda and Selena were. Claire gave another sigh, defeated, seeing the same look in Dreda's eyes as Selena's, and knowing there was nothing she could do to stop this inevitable clash. Selena, show her to the library after. Show her around the gym, and Rosa, don't beat her too badly. Hey, what makes you think she's gonna win? Selena glared. I'm walking here. So apparently they're from New York. I'm channeling New York more than anything else. Hey. Claire recovered her sunny disposition with a cheeky grin. Have fun. Selena shook off her pouty face and looked down at Dreda with a smile. You probably already know my name, but the name's Selena Wilder. Dreda stopped herself just. Rosa. Yeah, new name thing's weird, isn't it? You'll get used to it. Selena picked up on it. This way, she added, cocking her head, then turning. She led her through a door opposite to the one Dreda just watched Claire leave through, and down a corridor to a set of wooden double doors. You're not bothered about people watching, right? Selena asked, stopping at the doors. No, Dreda said simply. Good. With that, Selena pushed open both doors to a large, shiny, wooden-floored, high-ceilinged gym, complete with benches around the side and court markings for multiple types of games. Dreda had to admit she was impressed. She couldn't tell you what she was expecting, but the facilities were more clean and new, more than she could have asked for. On the benches, she spotted their audience. One, as she expected, was the younger Wild sister. The second took a few minutes to recognize. The young dark-skinned girl was in a white shirt and a short black skirt, her hair braided down her back. Overall, the young girl looked like she was ready for school, her tie in a very loose, rebellious knot. Dreda admitted if it wasn't for the fact that she knew everyone here was a hero, she might not have recognized Lanny. She was much better at this whole secret identity thing than she would have guessed. That was until she jumped to her feet, threw her arm in the air in some strange hyper wave and yelled, "Moon!" Dreda still had no idea how to handle Lanny. The hypergirl just baffled her. The winds picked up and the girl hopped over a good 10 meters in one floaty stride. Sup! She landed as the younger Wilder got up and walked over like a normal person. Lanny tells me you kick ass. Ass. Lanny tells me you kick ass. Oh, these accents are going to be great, just so you know. Pandora said simply, frowning when her older sister gave her a big sigh. Oh, Pandora realized. I'm Pandora Wilder. Better. Selena nodded. Rosa. Dreda told her, leaning away from Lanny. Good name, the airbender noted. Spicy. Right. Selena walked past them and pointed to some doorways in the gym. Ladies and lads. You know, if they're American, I probably shouldn't have said lads. That's a very British thing. She shot at each with a finger gun to point out which was which. They got showers, bathrooms, and we've all got a locker, which you'll probably be given later. Dreda nodded. So, you ready? Getting right down to it? Dreda asked as Pandora pulled Lanny back to the sidelines. Well, normally I'd ask if you want to get changed, but I doubt you have any gym stuff. Wilder shrugged. Besides, you're as excited as I am. I can tell. She added with a smirk. Dreda had to admit she was. She was even shaking a little bit as she walked further into the gym and stood opposite Selena. Should we do it? Ready, set, go? Pandora called over. Yeah, I think that would be good. Selena crouched down and brought her fists up. Okay! Ready! Dreda followed suit, settling into her own fighting stance. Set! Dreda's mind didn't melt away quite as quickly this time. She was busy watching it happen to Selena. The pair of bright green orbs that had been full of life clouded over and nothing showed. The doors to the soul that could have given away any of her moves were locked firmly shut. It had been a long time since Dreda faced someone like this. She couldn't wipe the smile from her face. Go! Lenny and Pandora yelled, both jumping up from their seats as the two warriors darted for each other. And that is definitely where I'm going to end it, because you've had like 10 minutes more of me than you normally would on a Sunday. Lucky you! I'm glad it's gone well. I hope you have enjoyed. As obviously this is my book, my stuff, and my babies. Interesting things about this chapter: Pandora and Selena are what I like to call legacy characters. They are characters that I originally made for other stories that I have pulled into this universe because I liked them and I probably wasn't going to do much with their original universes. And in this universe, they kind of have the best life they could lead. They get some stuff happen to them later on. But in their original universe, the two of them had to fight each other. It was a tragic tale of loving sisters that have to fight each other because of horrible situations. Where in this one, they get to be family. They get to be happy families. So honestly, I've done them a favor by pulling them into this universe. There's a few other characters that are legacies, but I think they are the main ones for Moon Girl 1. I can tell you about the other legacies as we find them. Because that's what happens. I write some stories and then I really like some of the characters, but I can't finish those stories, or those stories just don't get to the end, so I pull them into other stories and just reincarnate the characters. My legacies. And I think that's the only interesting thing. A lot of it is just faff and knowledge and stuff. A lot of the more corporate side of the hero stuff is very much inspired by Tiger and Bunny, which is the superhero series with built-in product placement, because they literally have corporation logos on their costumes. It's crazy. And it was just a great idea, honestly. So I've rolled with that a lot, given it my own spin. I also, with the superhero themed mugs, I do have my own Moon Girl mug, which is purple and has yellow moons on it. I got it custom made because I wanted it. I always thought the superhero mugs in these stories would make great merchandise one day. But Nike endorsed heresy. One of them is literally sponsored by Pepsi in that anime, and another one is sponsored by Domino's. The rest are more Japanese-based brands, so I'm not sure about them, but those are the ones I recognize. It's very funny. I think that's all I have for you. That's all the fun info I have for you. We've gotten a quarter of the way through, which doesn't surprise me too much because Moon Girl's quite short. At least the first one is. They get thicker. It's like the Harry Potter books. They got thicker. And that'll be me, I think, for the day. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Ruby Dippy, for being in the chat. Yeah. It is. It very much is. Thank you for anyone who lurked. Thank you for anyone who watches the VOD. If you have not already, I would highly appreciate any likes and subscribes. Numbers going up makes my brain go brr, and it makes me happy. I think that's it. It's only a two streams next week. If only because on Monday I have some social commitments, so I don't have time to stream, unfortunately. On Tuesday, I will be starting a new game. We will be starting Library of Ruina, which is a sort of turn-based deck building JRPG. So that should be fun. I'm not 100% sure on what to expect. I just wanted to play a game that was on theme for magical libraries. So it should be good. I'm excited. A friend has told me it is good. I'm excited to start a new game. And then obviously on Sunday, I will be back with more Moon Girl One Moonrise by me. If you can't wait for that, you can always go buy the book in the links below in the description. Yay! I should be advertising the other one. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention. If you have enjoyed the books I've read here, and you don't want to buy them, but you want to support the authors a bit more, I highly suggest going to find them on... Go find the books on, say, Amazon or Goodreads and just leave a review. Because I've read the whole thing to you. You basically read it. You can give your honest opinion on it. And that will also help the authors and myself if you feel like it. Because they're all indies, the people I have read. So none of them are like super amazing popular authors. So they could do with your help. That's it. That's all I can think about. I have had fun. I hope you had fun. This has been Bryony Rose Smith live from the Forbidden Library. Thank you and goodbye.